Right now, someone is playing you. They might be smiling at your face, nodding along, acting like they care. But behind that mask, they're calculating, testing your boundaries, measuring your reactions, learning exactly which buttons to press to make you bend, break, or obey. And the worst part, you let them. Not because you're weak, but because you were trained to be manipulated from birth. Your parents rewarded you for obedience. Your teachers praised you for compliance. Society taught you that being agreeable makes you good. But here's the truth they never told you. Good people get used. Agreeable people get controlled. And the moment you become predictable, you become a tool in someone else's hands. Machiavelli knew this centuries ago. He watched as kings fell, not to armies, but to the whispers of advisors who knew their weaknesses. He saw empires crumble because rulers couldn't tell the difference between loyalty and manipulation. And he understood something most men will die never realizing. The world is not divided into good people and bad people. It's divided into those who control and those who are controlled. This video is your exit from slavery. Not the chains you can see, but the invisible ones wrapped around your mind. You're about to learn how manipulators operate, how they infiltrate your thoughts, and most importantly, how to become so psychologically fortified that no one can ever move you again. Watch every second, because by the end, you won't just understand manipulation. You'll be immune to it. You think you make your own decisions. You think your thoughts are your own. But let me ask you something. Why do you feel guilty when someone gives you the silent treatment? Why do you feel the need to explain yourself when someone questions you? Why do you panic when someone pulls away emotionally? Those reactions weren't born inside you. They were installed, programmed, conditioned through years of training you didn't even notice. And now they're being used against you. Manipulation doesn't start with lies. It starts with understanding you better than you understand yourself. Every manipulator knows this. They don't need to force you. They just need to trigger the right emotion, and you'll do exactly what they want. Think about it. When someone makes you feel guilty, you apologize even when you did nothing wrong. When someone withholds affection, you chase them even when they don't deserve it. When someone questions your worth, you scramble to prove yourself even when you already know your value. That's not love. That's not connection. That's control. And it works because you were taught to fear conflict, rejection, and being alone. Machiavelli said it best. Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand. People don't respond to reality. They respond to how reality is presented. A manipulator doesn't need to be right. They just need to make you feel wrong. A manipulator doesn't need to be strong. They just need to make you feel weak. A manipulator doesn't need power. They just need you to believe they have it. And once you believe it, they own you. Here's the first truth. Most manipulation happens because you allow access to your emotions. You care too much about being liked. You fear too much being judged. You need too much to be understood. And every single one of those needs is a door someone can walk through to control you. The man who needs nothing is untouchable. The man who fears nothing is unbreakable. The man who cares about the opinions of no one cannot be moved. That's who you must become. But to get there, you first need to see the tricks being used against you right now. Guilt is the most powerful weapon in a manipulator's arsenal. Why? Because guilt makes you act against your own interest while believing you're doing the right thing. It's elegant. It's invisible, and it works on almost everyone. Here's how it's done. Someone does something that hurts you. Instead of apologizing, they flip the script. They make you feel guilty for being upset. You're too sensitive. You're overreacting. You're making a big deal out of nothing. And suddenly, you're the one apologizing. You're the one explaining. You're the one trying to fix a problem you didn't create. That's guilt manipulation. Or think about this. Someone wants something from you. Instead of asking directly, they guilt you into offering. They sigh. They mention how hard things are. They talk about how no one helps them. And you, being the good person you are, jump in to save them. Not because you want to, but because you'd feel like a bad person if you didn't. That's weaponized guilt, and it's everywhere. In relationships, in friendships, in families, at work. People use guilt to make you carry their burdens, tolerate their disrespect, and ignore your own needs. Machiavelli would tell you this. The moment someone makes you feel guilty for setting a boundary, they've revealed themselves. They don't respect you. They're trying to control you, and your guilt is the leash they're pulling. So how do you break free? You kill the guilt. You stop apologizing for things that aren't your fault. You stop explaining your decisions to people who have no authority over your life. You stop feeling bad for saying no. You stop carrying other people's emotional weight just because they're too weak to hold it themselves. When someone tries to guilt you, you don't defend. You don't explain. You don't justify. You simply say, "I'm not responsible for how you feel about my choices," and then you walk away. Let them sit with their manipulation. Let them realize it doesn't work anymore. Because the moment you stop reacting to guilt, you become untouchable. But guilt is only one weapon. There's something even more dangerous. Something that's destroyed more men than any battle ever could. Fear. Fear is the chains you can't see but feel every day. Fear of rejection. Fear of being alone. Fear of conflict. Fear of losing someone. Fear of being judged. They don't need to hurt you. They just need to make you afraid they might. Think about the person who threatens to leave every time you don't obey. Think about the boss who hints at firing you when you stand up for yourself. Think about the friend who withdraws affection the moment you disagree. They're not strong. They're just holding your fear over your head like a blade. And you comply because the fear of loss feels worse than the pain of staying. But here's what Machiavelli understood. The man who fears loss has already lost. Because fear makes you negotiable. It makes you controllable. It makes you a servant pretending to be free. You think you're choosing to stay in that relationship, that job, that friendship. But you're not choosing. You're afraid to leave. And there's a difference. A choice made from fear is not a choice. It's obedience. So what do? You face the fear. You ask yourself, what's the worst thing that happens if I lose this person, this job, this situation? And then you prepare for that outcome. You build a life where losing anyone or anything doesn't destroy you. You save money so your boss can't threaten you. You develop yourself so no relationship defines you. You build inner strength so rejection doesn't break you. And once you do that, once you become someone who can survive alone, fear loses its grip. Because the moment you're willing to lose everything, no one can take anything from you. That's power. That's freedom. And that's what manipulators fear most. A man who isn't afraid of them. But even when you kill fear and guilt, there's still one trap left. The deadliest one of all. And most men walk right into it without even knowing. Emotional dependency. You think you love that person, but what if I told you it's not love? What if it's addiction? Emotional dependency is when your mood, your worth, your happiness depends on someone else. When they're around, you feel alive. When they pull away, you collapse. When they praise you, you're confident. When they criticize you, you doubt yourself. That's not a relationship. That's a drug. And just like any drug, the dealer controls the addict. Machiavelli would say the man who depends on another for his sense of self will always be that person's slave. Because dependency is manipulation's favorite playground. Once someone knows you need them, they can do whatever they want. They can disrespect you and you'll tolerate it because you're afraid to lose them. They can ignore you and you'll chase them because the silence hurts too much. They can treat you like an option and you'll accept it because being their backup feels better than being alone. This is why manipulators create dependency. They love bomb you in the beginning. They make themselves irreplaceable. They become your source of validation, affection, security. And once you're hooked, once you can't imagine life without them, they start testing how much you'll tolerate. And you tolerate everything. Because you're not in love, you're in withdrawal. So how do you break free? You become emotionally self-sufficient. You stop outsourcing your happiness to other people. You stop needing their approval to feel worthy. You stop needing their presence to feel whole. You build a life so fulfilling that other people become a bonus, not a necessity. When someone compliments you, you appreciate it, but don't crave it. When someone leaves, you let them go without begging. When someone disrespects you, you cut them off without hesitation, because you don't need anyone. You want people in your life who add value, but if they subtract, you remove them without guilt, without fear, without hesitation. That's when you become immune. That's when manipulation dies in your presence, because the man who needs nothing cannot be controlled. But knowing all of this still isn't enough. Because manipulators don't just use emotions, they use something far more sophisticated: your own mind. Every manipulator knows this secret. If they can control how you see yourself, they control everything. This is called gaslighting, and it's the most dangerous form of manipulation because it doesn't just hurt you. It makes you question reality itself. Here's how it works. You notice something wrong, a lie, a betrayal, a pattern of disrespect. You bring it up, and instead of acknowledging it, they deny it. They twist it. They make you feel like you're imagining things. You're too sensitive. That never happened. You're remembering it wrong. You're crazy. And because you want to believe them, because you want the relationship to work, you start doubting yourself. Maybe I am overreacting. Maybe I did misunderstand. Maybe it's my fault. And just like that, they've rewritten reality. Now you're not fighting them. You're fighting yourself. You're questioning your memory, your perception, your sanity. And that's exactly where they want you. Confused, powerless, dependent on their version of truth. Machiavelli understood this. He wrote that the greatest trick of power is making people believe the lie is truth and the truth is madness. Because once you control someone's perception of reality, you control them completely. So how do you defend against this? You trust yourself more than you trust anyone else. When someone tells you your feelings are wrong, you don't accept it. When someone rewrites history to make themselves innocent, you don't play along. When someone makes you question your sanity, you walk away. You document things. You keep records. You trust your gut. And most importantly, you stop arguing with people who refuse to see reality. Because gaslighters don't want truth. They want control. And the moment you stop giving them your confusion, your doubt, your need to be understood, they lose their power. You become unreachable. But even with all these defenses, there's still one mistake most men make. One blind spot that lets manipulators back in, even after you've learned to see through them. And that mistake is thinking manipulators are obvious. You think manipulators are easy to spot. The loud ones, the aggressive ones, the obvious villains. But the most dangerous manipulators are the ones who seem kind, gentle, and caring, the ones who never yell but somehow always get their way, the ones who never threaten but make you feel guilty for disappointing them, the ones who never demand but always end up getting what they want. Machiavelli warned about this. He said the fox is more dangerous than the lion because the fox doesn't need strength. The fox needs cunning, and cunning manipulation looks like love. It looks like concern. It looks like someone who just wants the best for you. But here's the test. If someone's love makes you feel smaller, weaker, more dependent, it's not love, it's control. If someone's help always comes with conditions, it's not help. It's leverage. If someone's care makes you feel guilty for having boundaries, it's not care. It's manipulation. Real love makes you stronger. Real care respects your boundaries. Real connection doesn't require you to shrink yourself. So stop looking for the villain with the evil laugh. Start looking for the person who makes you feel bad every time you prioritize yourself. Start looking for the person whose kindness always has a price. Start looking for the person who gets upset, not when you fail them, but when you succeed without them. Those are the manipulators, the quiet ones, the kind ones, the ones who cry victim while slowly draining your soul. And once you see them, you'll realize they've been there all along, hiding behind smiles. Behind "I'm just worried about you." Behind "I'm only saying this because I care." But now you know better. Now you see the mask. And now you can finally walk away. But walking away isn't enough, because if you don't fix what made you vulnerable in the first place, you'll just find another manipulator, and the cycle will repeat. So let's talk about what you need to destroy inside yourself to become permanently immune. There's a version of you that still exists. The version that desperately wants to be liked. The version that avoids conflict at all costs. The version that explains, defends, and justifies every decision to people who don't even matter. That version is why you keep getting manipulated. And until you kill him, you'll never be free. Machiavelli would tell you that the man who seeks approval is the easiest man to control. Why? Because approval seeking is predictable. If someone knows you want to be liked, they just have to threaten their opinion of you and you'll bend. If someone knows you fear conflict, they just have to raise their voice and you'll fold. If someone knows you need validation, they just have to withhold it and you'll chase. You are an open book, and manipulators are speed readers. So how do you close the book? You stop caring, not about everything, but about the opinions of people who don't pay your bills, who don't add value to your life, who don't respect your boundaries. You stop explaining yourself to people who've already decided to misunderstand you. You stop defending your choices to people who have no authority over your life. You stop trying to prove yourself to people who will never be satisfied. Because here's the truth. The people who matter don't need convincing. And the people who need convincing don't matter. Once you accept that, once you truly internalize it, something shifts. You stop being afraid of disapproval. You stop being moved by judgment. You stop being controlled by the threat of rejection. You become solid, unmovable, unreachable. And manipulators, they sense it immediately. They try their usual tricks and nothing works. You don't react. You don't chase. You don't explain. You just exist, unbothered, untouchable. And that terrifies them, because they've lost their power over you. But to maintain this power, to keep yourself immune, there's one final principle you must understand. One law that separates the controlled from the controllers. And it's this: you must become someone people fear losing, not someone who fears being lost. Most men have it backwards. They're afraid of being abandoned, rejected, replaced. So they cling. They tolerate disrespect. They ignore red flags. They shrink themselves to keep people around. But here's what Machiavelli knew. The moment you become afraid of losing someone, you've already lost. Because fear makes you negotiable. It makes you controllable. It makes you a servant. But when you flip the script, when you become someone people are afraid to lose, everything changes. Now they're the ones chasing. Now they're the ones explaining. Now they're the ones trying to keep you happy. How do you become that person? You build yourself into someone so rare, so valuable, so self-contained that your absence is felt like a wound. You build discipline so strong that people see you don't need them. You build standards so high that people know you won't tolerate disrespect. You build options so abundant that people realize they're replaceable. And most importantly, you build indifference so deep that walking away doesn't hurt you. It empowers you. When someone disrespects you, you don't argue, you disappear. When someone takes you for granted, you don't complain, you withdraw. When someone tests your boundaries, you don't defend them. You just remove that person from your life without explanation, without anger, without looking back. And here's what happens. They panic. They realize they miscalculated. They thought you needed them, but you don't. They thought you'd beg, but you won't. They thought they had power, but they never did, because power was always yours. You just forgot it for a while. But now you remember, and now no one can take it from you again. You've been rebuilt. Not inspired, not motivated, but fundamentally restructured from the inside out. You killed the guilt that made you apologize for things that weren't your fault. You destroyed the fear that made you tolerate disrespect just to keep people around. You erased the dependency that made you collapse when someone pulled away. You stopped seeking approval from people who never mattered. You stopped explaining yourself to people who were never listening. You stopped chasing people who were never worth catching. And in doing so, you became something most men will never be. Immune. Not cold, not heartless, but unreachable. You still feel, you still care, but your feelings no longer control you. Your care no longer makes you weak. You've learned to observe manipulation before it takes root. You've learned to recognize the patterns, the guilt trips, the fear tactics, the dependency traps, the gaslighting, the silent punishments. And now, when someone tries, you don't react, you don't defend, you don't engage, you just watch and smile, because you know something they don't. You know you've already won, not by fighting them, but by becoming someone they can no longer move. Machiavelli once said, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." But what he really meant was this: it is better to be in control of yourself than to be controlled by others. And now you are. You are no longer the man who bends when someone raises their voice. You are no longer the man who breaks when someone walks away. You are no longer the man who chases, explains, defends, or apologizes for existing. You are the man who decides, who stays, who goes, what's tolerated, what's not. You set the rules now. You define the boundaries. You control access to your time, your energy, your presence. And if someone doesn't like it, they can leave. And you won't chase them, you won't beg them, you won't even think about them, because you've become what every manipulator fears. A man who cannot be moved. A man who cannot be guilt-tripped, fear-mongered, gaslit, or emotionally controlled. A man who belongs to no one. And that makes you untouchable. So go forward. Not louder, but quieter. Not angrier, but calmer. Not weaker, but sharper. And when they try, and they will try, to pull you back into old patterns, to test if you've really changed, you don't prove anything. You just let your silence speak. Let your absence be the answer. Let your indifference be the lesson. Because manipulation only works on men who still believe they need to be understood. And you don't need that anymore. You are free. Like this video if you're done being played. Subscribe if you're ready to become the kind of man no one can manipulate, gaslight, or control ever again. Because this isn't self-help. This is psychological warfare, and you just became a weapon.